Okay, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are looking at a real-world case study of what I call a personal infrastructure collapse. We're going to trace exactly how fast modern safety nets can just totally unravel when put under pressure. It's basically a chain reaction like a giant puzzle falling apart, and we're going to walk through it step by step. This whole situation really forces us to ask a super grounding question. What actually happens when your safety nets just vanish overnight? I mean, our modern lives are built on this invisible architecture, right? Access to funds, transportation, having legal shelter. But as the source material for this explainer shows us, when that very first domino falls, the rest of your security can collapse with alarming, almost mechanical speed.
So here is the exact timeline of displacement we'll be mapping out today. In April, credit gets cut off. Days later, a car breaks down. Weeks pass before a pretty shocking condo discovery, leading to a desperate final step: breaking in.
All right, part one, the financial severance, the trigger. You know, every cascade has a catalyst. In April, Emily abruptly cut off Kyle's access to a shared credit card. And this single administrative action instantly severed his entire financial safety net. Without access to funds, the foundational layer of modern survival just evaporates. You can't buy a plane ticket, you can't rent a hotel, or even really pivot to a new plan. The systemic vulnerability begins right here, with the freezing of a piece of plastic. So, the absolutely crucial point to consider now is this. How does a financial freeze actually impact your physical mobility? Well, when you have zero liquidity, you literally cannot buy your way out of a problem. You are forced to rely entirely on the depreciating physical assets you already have on hand just to get from point A to point B. Which leads us to part two, break down your Seattle. The physical reality. Check out this hard metric. Exactly 100 miles. Because he was forced to drive an old car back due to the lack of funds, the vehicle inevitably broke down just under 100 miles away from Seattle. Now, why does that specific number matter? It's actually a fascinating loophole in AAA towing policies. His roadside assistance insurance covered towing up to exactly that distance, which allowed the dead vehicle to just barely scrape by and reach the city limits of downtown Seattle. But getting into the city definitely didn't mean safety. Actually, it meant intense exposure. Dropped off by the tow truck at a mechanic in downtown Seattle in the dead of night, Kyle had to physically stake out and guard the dead car for hours. Everything he owned in the world was inside that vehicle. And adding to the tension, he directly watched someone breaking into cars just across the street. The financial freeze had now cornered him into physically guarding his entire remaining material life in a highly vulnerable urban environment. The emotional and literal reality of this moment is perfectly captured by Kyle's own words. He said, and I quote, "That was when my homelessness began. I still have all my stuff in my car." The very next day, those belongings went into a storage space. With the vehicle completely dead, all physical mobility was extinguished. Okay, part three, the housing displacement, the loss of shelter. So, without money or a car, the only logical step was seeking shelter. The expectation was pretty simple: retreat to a jointly owned condo. But the shocking reality? The condo had already been rented out to unexpected tenants. The legal owner was completely bypassed, leaving him locked out of his own asset. No way, right? And when you're faced with this, there's no immediate real-world fix. You are instantly trapped by the rigid machinery of administrative law. Here are the strict procedural steps taken to legally reclaim the property. Step 1, discovering the unauthorized rental. Step 2, officially serving legal notice to the unexpected tenants to vacate the premises. And step 3, the agonizing, mandatory waiting period for those tenants to legally leave. The foundational asset was technically his, but the legal reality meant he remained effectively homeless while the administrative clock ticked down. Which brings us to part 4, reclaiming the threshold, the final act. Even after the tenants vacated, the structural absurdity just kept going. As Kyle noted, I was not included in the consent, which was my legal right owning the place. The profound realization here is that legal ownership, the very bedrock of our societal safety net, can be completely and administratively circumvented. Despite owning the property, his consent wasn't required for the cascading events that kept him locked out in the cold. Which leads to this incredible, punchy fact. Once the unexpected tenants finally left, the legal owner had to literally hire a lockpick service to break back into his own home. I mean, it is the ultimate absurd irony of this whole displacement cascade. An individual systematically stripped of finances and mobility, ultimately having to commit an act of breaking and entering just to step foot inside a property he legally owned all along. So as we wrap up this explainer, we really have to ask ourselves something. When modern survival infrastructure, meaning money, mobility, and shelter, collapses sequentially, how do you rebuild the foundation? This entire journey highlights the absolute fragility of the systems we rely on every single day. When that first financial string is cut, the domino effect that follows can rapidly dismantle your entire world. It definitely leaves you wondering about the true resilience of your own safety nets, doesn't it? Keep questioning the systems around you, and thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.